Welcome to According to Sam, folks. This is episode 175, and it is Monday, January 8th. I hope you're having or had a great day by the time you watch this, depending on where you're watching it. I hope you have a great week. I'm going to be here today, going to be here on Friday again, and you'll be getting a new According to Sam podcast every Friday and Monday, and potentially Wednesday as we progress in this year and get further into the year. But if you didn't catch my last podcast, I did my first podcast of the year on Monday. You want to look at, if you're not caught up on the themes and what we're talking about on According to Sam right now, you want to go back and listen to episode 173, where I start introducing the theme, and then also my last podcast from Monday, episode 174. And we're gonna touch on a little bit of that theme today, but I have some news that I want to get into. Joe Biden's campaign speech that he gave on Friday, not Saturday. I thought that it was going to be Saturday because that's what they announced, that it was going to be on the anniversary on January 6th, but he did it on the day before because I think that they were expecting bad weather at Valley Forge. So we're going to cover that. But just to recap the theme of the last two podcasts, we were talking about witchcraft, and we were talking about wickedness. And I was explaining, what witchcraft is, what wickedness is. We ended the last podcast tying together the holly tree that is used by most of the most powerful witches to conduct magic. The holly tree, even the main character in Harry Potter himself, his wand comes from the holly tree, and from the holly tree you get Hollywood. That's where the name Hollywood comes from, is because of the wood that these witches use to make their wand. That is the instrument of their craft. The wand is the instrument of their craft. So I was tying that together, and I was explaining how Hollywood sets the veil. Hollywood is, all about making magic. Even Disney, that's part of their slogan is, that this is where magic happens. But what I want you to understand is that it's not just Hollywood as far as movies and TV shows per se. It's all of media. These witches own all of our media. And they've spent time since the 1996 Telecommunications Act. This is why the 1996 Telecommunications Act was passed by the legislature during Bill Clinton's administration in 1996, and Bill Clinton signed it because it was all part of their scheme to consolidate all of the media into very few hands. Because consolidating all the media, I'm not talking about just movies and TVs, I'm talking about print media, I'm talking about publishing companies with books, I'm talking about the news for sure. Because all of the companies that own all the major studios in Hollywood that are producing movies and everything, they all own the news stations as well. 20th Century Fox, Disney. It's not Viacom anymore, it's National Amusements. These are the companies that own all of our media. They own the news companies, and their job is to set the veil. But what I also want you to understand is that it's not just entertainment and media where these witches have control. They have control of your colleges and academia. It's funny. I think about this all the time about when you think about all of these colleges, some of our most pristine colleges in the United States, but not only in the United States. You go back to Europe, look at colleges like Oxford. These colleges started as colleges of canon law. That's what started these institutions, that they were Bible colleges. And if you look at what has happened to these colleges, these major institutions that we have held dear, these institutions that had, launched the Enlightenment, that, created the modern world. You look at what they've become. Look at Harvard now. You look at look at the Ivy League schools. These schools, many of them started out as religious institutions. That's just a fact. But these witches, they've taken over the colleges. They've taken over all major businesses. They're in politics for sure. You're going to see when we get into this how they're in politics. But look at these logos. The thing is that these guys, these witches will tell you who they are. Like most of these companies that are run by, major corporations that are run by these witches, you'll notice that they have logos that are symbols of the occult in their witchcraft. They like to use the sun a lot. You'll notice the sun. But look at this one down here, the red bull, the sun, and the bull. What's that about? Why is the bull significant? You remember in the story in Exodus, after Moses brings the children of Israel out of bondage in Egypt, and then Moses goes up to Mount Sinai to talk to God and to get the law. And when he comes back down, the Jews, they have a golden calf that they have built a golden calf, and they are worshiping and dancing around and practicing witchcraft, which they had learned in Egypt, and they are honoring the calf, the bull. Why is the bull so significant? Why is the sun so significant? Because most of this, the craft, and we're going to get into the origins of this when we go back to Mesopotamia and Sumera and the gods that they were worshiping and where this craft comes from. They were sun worshipers. Most of the craft deals with astrology. They were sun worshipers. But the bull is because the age in which the craft, when this magic was first introduced into humankind, the age that they were in was the age of Taurus. So there were sun worshipers that worshiped the bull because they were in the age of Taurus. And then after the age of Taurus, we had the age of Pisces, and we're currently in the age of Aquarius. The age of Aquarius. But back then, when the craft was originating, they worshiped the sun and they worshiped the bull because it was the age of Taurus. And you see their symbology over all their logos. Columbia. We're going to talk about who Columbia is. But the point that I'm trying to make is that it's not just in Hollywood, and it's not just media where these witches exist. They have control of our entire world right now through big business, through politics, through the media is what helps them, what helps them, keep the veil of secrecy because of the media. Now, one of my favorite logos is with hidden meaning is this one. Check this out. I have a little sip of coffee. Hope you don't mind. Sirius XM radio. I love this logo because it's Sirius satellite radio, and it's got the little dog, and it's got the little 5-point star right there. You guys would know what Sirius is? Sirius. Sirius is the brightest star in the night sky. What I'm telling you is that most of this crap comes from astrology. Sirius is the brightest star in the night sky. Its name derives from the Greek word meaning lit, glowing, scorching. Then we come down here. Sirius is colloquially known as the dog star, reflecting its prominence in the constellation Canis Major, the great dog. The heliacal rising of Sirius marked the flood in the Nile and in ancient Egypt, and the dog days of summer of ancient Greece. So Sirius is the dog star, and the logo Sirius, and then you have the little dog with the 5-pointed star. It's really cute. Now take a look at this article. Since ancient times, across multiple civilizations, Sirius, the dog star, has been surrounded by mysterious lore. Esoteric teaching of all ages have invariably attributed Sirius a special status, and the star's importance in the occult symbolism is a attestation of that fact. What makes Sirius so special? Is it's simply due to the fact that it is the brightest star in the sky. So Sirius is occultism. You read more. It's represented by the pentagram. The pentagram is actually a representation of Sirius. And then you have the logo here. Let's just go back to the logo so you can see the logo, Sirius, the dog, the 5-point star. It's all in there. It's cute, but it's conveying a hidden message. That's what I'm trying to explain to you. And if you know these symbols, you will see this symbology in many logos across many businesses that are, essentially run by witches. Essentially run by witches. But you would be surprised. Some of you may be surprised. Not all of you would be surprised. But these witches are also in your churches. They're in your religion. There's witches in every major religion running it. Pat Robbins. Look at Pat Robinson here. This guy ran one of the most popular Christian networks for years. And he's on the cover of Time. This is when he was running for president. It says 2008 there, but it wasn't 2008. I think it was in 87 or in the 88 campaign. But he's running for president, and he's on the cover of Time as he's, coming out and announcing his candidacy during the Lion's Paw, letting people know that I'm running for president. And if you're a witch like me, then I'm one of you. That's what that is. It's funny because people asked Pat Robinson about this hand signal after the Time magazine was released, and he said that his arm was hurting. And that he had to keep his arm like that because he had some type of injury. But if you look at this picture here, you can see that this is two different pictures. You can see the separation in the knuckles there. There's no separation in the knuckles here. So I guess his arm was hurting in both of these pictures. But the lion's paw is a Masonic hand symbol, but it even predates Freemasonry. And a lot of this stuff does. Like, Freemasonry is just one vehicle of this witchcraft, but there's many, many, many groups, many, many vehicles of this witchcraft. The Rosicrucians, the Wiccans. I can go down the line of these different groups that are groups of witches. So the Freemasonry is only one. And we're going to get into Freemasonry down the line, but that's what this symbol is that Pat Robertson, who's one of, our esteemed Christian leaders, is doing. But it's not only in Protestant Christianity that you have these witches. You have witches in Catholicism as well that are running Catholicism. Sorry, I'm not anti-Catholic. I'm pro-truth. Pro-truth, not anti-Catholic. You guys remember when I played this clip in the last podcast, and this was the clip of, it's AI. It was the clip of all the celebrities participating in witchcraft. And I want to show you guys this comment that was made underneath this video. And this person, Alistair Howley, it's a play on Aleister Crowley, probably not her real name. But Alistair Howley, if you go to her page, it says, occult historian. I archive old text on YouTube. I've lived 100 lifetimes and walked with giants. Call me any pronouns you like. And you got the crescent moon and then the gay flag, LGBT flag. So underneath this AI video, she comes and she comments, what's the difference between Christian rituals and black magic? That's the question she asked. And this comment underneath says, one promotes life while the other promotes death. And then they get into this conversation, not true. And it's this back and forth. But it's all prompted by this very interesting question. What's the difference between Christian rituals and black magic? Now, when I read this, very first thing that I was thinking is, what Christian rituals is she talking about? What Christian rituals is she talking about? And then I started to think, is she talking about transubstantiation? Transubstantiation? Because if she's talking about transubstantiation, I mean, her question is very valid. What's the difference in black magic and a priest saying a magic Latin words and changing the material substance of bread and wine into flesh and blood? And transubstantiation is witchcraft, if you ask me. This is a process that a priest sits in front of bread and wine and he says, "This is my body" in Latin. Hocus Pocus mayo, or as Bugs Bunny used to say, Hocus Pocus mayo. And the bread and the wine become flesh and blood. This is what the Catholic Church teaches. This is what they taught in the Council of Trent. Transubstantiation is the doctrine of the bread and wine at the Eucharist change into the body and blood of Christ. In the Council of Trent, they affirmed this. Now, the Council of Trent, if you don't know, you had the Protestant Reformation happening in Germany, and the Catholic Church called a council to hash out how they were going to address the Protestant Reformation. And one of the accusations that the Protestants were making against the Catholic Church was against this witchcraft of transubstantiation. And in the Council of Trent, the Catholic Church, they affirmed transubstantiation and said, look, this 100% happens. And if you don't believe this happens, then you are anathema. If you don't believe that the priest says the magic words and changes the blood and body or the wine and the bread into the actual blood and body of Christ. That's witchcraft. So the Council of Trent, they affirm that. And they Council of Trent is where, you should also know, is where the Jesuits were created. The Jesuits were created in the 16th century during the Council of Trent. We're going to talk about the Jesuits. But it shouldn't be anti-Catholic. You shouldn't view my view that and plenty of other people besides me who view transubstantiation as witchcraft. You shouldn't, consider me being anti-Catholic, because I'm not anti-Catholic. Again, I'm pro-truth, not anti-Catholic. But only about half of Catholics believe this. This is right here. General belief and doctrine, knowledge among Catholics. Georgetown University, Jesuit University, poll of United States Catholics in 2008 showed that 57% said they believe that Jesus Christ is really present in the Eucharist. And in 2008, nearly 43% said that they believe the wine and the bread are symbols, that they're symbols of Jesus and not actual blood and flesh. So when this witch here is asking about what's the difference between Christian rituals and black magic, if she's talking about transubstantiation, she's 100% correct. She's 100% correct. And first of all, why are Christians, trying to... Jesus is alive. If you believe in Christianity, you don't believe that Jesus is dead. You believe that he's alive because he rose from the dead. There is no reason to celebrate the dead Jesus unless you are celebrating what he did in death. And what he did in death was conquer death. This is what Christians believe, and that he rose from the dead. No, the priest is not saying the magic words, hocus pocus mayo, and turning bread and wine into blood and flesh. It's not happening. But that's just one example. I just wanted to show you that and to say that all over Christianity, in the Protestant part of Christianity, you have witches, and in the Catholic faith, you have witches, and we'll go more into this later. I will add more support to what I'm telling you. But also in Judaism, Jews can be witches. Why would it be anti-Semitic to say that some of these Jews, not all of them, some of these Jews participate in witchcraft? Why would that be controversial to say that? Do you know anything about the Bible? And I was just telling you the story about how when Moses goes up to Mount Zion and he comes back down, and those are Jews there participating in witchcraft, worshiping a calf or a bull. I mean, Solomon participated in witchcraft. King Ahab, who was married to Jezebel, participated in witchcraft. The Jews, do you know anything about the story of the Maccabees and how the beginning of the Maccabean Wars, that they went to war with Jews? It was a civil war because Jews were embracing witchcraft. And the Greeks had taken over the temple, but there were many Jews that allowed the Greeks to take over the temple and set up their witchcraft altars. So the witches are in big business. The witches are in media. The witches are in academia. The witches are in banking. The witches are in religion. They're all over our society. All over our society. And we're going to talk more about them in the next podcast. The next two podcasts, we're going to get really, really deep into this. Now, in some news, let's start talking about Joe Biden here, because Joe Biden is running on January 6th, and he is not running on his record, and he's not running on promises, which I think's very interesting. I think it's very interesting that he is not running on his record and he's not running on promises, because they tell us that his record is phenomenal. That's what they tell us. And we got a lot of problems in this country that we need to fix. So why isn't he running on promises? Why isn't he running on bringing down inflation? Why isn't he running on securing the border? Why isn't he running on negotiating peace in Ukraine and in Israel and bringing peace to the world? Why isn't he running on any of that? Or his record? Why isn't he running on job creation and telling everybody how great a job creator he is? Why isn't he running on his economy and Bidenomics? Why isn't he running on his foreign policy? He's running on January 6th, and Trump is a threat to democracy. That's his whole campaign. It's crazy. Crazy to me that you're going to tell me that this guy is doing so great and he's got to run on January 6th and threats to democracy. It's absolutely ridiculous. They're lying to you. That's what these witches do. Now, Mitt Romney called out Joe Biden. Well, he didn't call him out. Mitt Romney doesn't want to see Trump be president again. He hates Trump. So he had some critiques on Joe Biden's coming out speech. Let me get this up for you. Mitt Romney had some critiques for Joe Biden's coming out speech. And what did Mitt Romney say? Republican Senator Mitt Romney claimed that Joe Biden's campaign strategy centered on portraying Donald Trump as a threat to democracy, quote, is a bust. That's Mitt Romney's words. That's not mine. Mitt Romney said that's a bust. That your campaign strategy to only focus on threats to democracy in January 6th is a bust. The senator of Utah made the remarks to the New York Times responding to Biden's first campaign speech on January 5th, the eve of January 6th, the Capitol attack's third anniversary, condemning the former president's involvement in the insurrection. So Romney fully believes that Trump is an insurrectionist, and he condemns him. Remember, Romney was the only senator to vote to impeach, the Republican senator to vote to impeach Donald Trump. I think that was with the first impeachment. There were 8 in the second impeachment, but Romney was the one. So Romney doesn't like Trump. So he's not coming at this from a angle that he's backing Trump up. Like, he wants Trump to be defeated, and he's telling that Joe Biden that, look, January 6th and this threat to democracy stuff, that's a bust. That's a bust, Biden. So all the talking heads all over the weekend or on the Sunday shows yesterday, they were all going in on Mitt Romney. How can Mitt Romney say that? How can Mitt Romney say that January 6th is a bust? January 6th is so important. This was a tragic day in our nation. We almost lost democracy. How can Mitt Romney say that? Well, this is how Mitt Romney can say that. This is how Mitt Romney can say that. You guys have been telling this January 6th story and threat to democracy for 3 years, and Joe Biden's polling at 38%. 38%. 38%. Now, this is one CNN poll. You'll see disapprovals up to 58% here. But here's 538. 538. 38%. 38%. 56.1%. So across multiple, you see here on 538, 95% of polls projected to fall within this range. So this is an average, 38%. Now, if you watch this speech, I thought it was hilarious because Joe Biden's up there yelling at people, talking about threats to democracy and Valley Forge, getting the history all wrong. Just lying his butt off. This whole speech is just filled with just, oh my God, if you guys watch this, I don't know that I'm going to have time to play any of it because I still got a lot of stuff that I got to show you. But Joe Biden's up there yelling and acting like he's the cat's meow. This dude's polling at 38%. 8%. Look at this. A fraying coalition, Black, Hispanic, and young voters abandon Biden as election day begins. Huh? President Biden heads into election year showing alarming weakness among stalwart of the Democratic base. Donald Trump is leading among Hispanic voters, young voters. 1 in 5 Black voters now say they'll support a third-party candidate. Huh? This guy's up here yelling, talking about Valley Forge and George Washington. He's polling at 38%. He's losing voters that have been traditionally stalwarts is what this article says, of the Democratic base. Look at this one. These numbers are going up. The numbers of people who believe that Joe Biden stole the 2020 election are not going down. They are going up. It's up to 1/3. How do you govern like this? 1/3 of the country believes that you stole the election and you're illegitimate? Look at this. More than 1/3 of U.S. adults say Biden's 2020 victory was not legitimate. New poll finds 62% believes Biden's election win over Donald Trump was fair. 62%, down from 69%. That's the wrong direction, Biden. That's the wrong direction. The numbers are going up, not down. So this guy's running on January 6th and threats to democracy. Mitt Romney saying that's a bust. And the numbers prove that Mitt Romney's right. That's what the numbers prove. Mitt Romney's right. It's a bust. You guys have been telling this story for 3 years, and it's a bust. Nobody cares about January 6th. Nobody believes you about threats to democracy. But they're going to keep lying. They're going to keep lying. Now, this witch was on this past weekend, yesterday, and I was going to play some clips from Biden's speech, but when I saw this interview, I had to change direction. I have to expose this witch and her lies. Now, take a listen to what Nancy Pelosi says here.
So it's very clear what happened that day. And at that same time, from the undisclosed location, Chuck Schumer and Mitch McConnell and I were begging the administration to send the National Guard to send the National Guard. We spoke to the Army, the Secretary of the Army. Well, I don't know, it takes time, and I have to talk to my boss about it, his boss.
Now listen to what she's saying. She's saying that on the day of the riot, we're in this undisclosed location, and we're calling the president, and we're telling him to do whatever he can do to send the National Guard. Send the National Guard is what she's saying. Take a listen.
Mitch McConnell and I were begging the administration to send the National Guard, We spoke
now,
to the Secretary of the Army. Well, I don't know, it takes time. And I have to talk to my boss about it, his boss being the acting Secretary of Defense, who knows that one thing and another. So it took.
It wasn't one thing or another, Nancy. Stop lying to these people.
It wasn't. Well, I don't know. It takes.
No, it wasn't the Army saying, oh, well, I don't know. I don't know if we can send the National Guard. First of all, why wasn't the National Guard deployed before January 6th? Let's answer that question first. Why wasn't there already National Guard at the Capitol on January 6th? I want you to take a look at. Here, let's just go back. I want to. Before I do that, I want you to listen to what Joe Biden says in the speech the other night.
Donald Trump's campaign is about him, not America, not you. Donald Trump's campaign is obsessed with the past, not the future.
Donald Trump's campaign is obsessed with the past, not the future. And this guy's running his entire campaign on January 6th.
He's willing to sacrifice our democracy, put himself in power. Our campaign is different. For me and Kamala, our campaign is about America. It's about you. It's about every age and background that occupy this country. It's about the future we're going to continue to build together. And our campaign is about preserving and strengthening our American democracy. 3 years ago tomorrow, we saw with our own eyes the violent mob stormed the United States Capitol. It was almost in disbelief as you first turned on the television. For the first time in our history, insurrectionists had come to stop the peaceful transfer of power in America.
For the first time in our history, insurrectionists have come to stop the peaceful transfer of power. When's the transfer of power, people? Is it January 6th or is it January 20th? What does the Constitution say? These people are trying to take advantage of idiots that don't know that the transfer of power is on January 20th. The transfer of power was not on January 6th. And I played the clip for you. Not going to even play it again, that on January 7th, Trump committed to a peaceful transfer of power. Joe Biden's transfer of power was 100% peaceful because Joe Biden's transfer of power was behind this.
Right now, I'm here at 3rd Independence Avenue, and as you can see, there are military vehicles in our nation's capital. This is an example of the heightened sense of security that you see all around here, including the new 7-foot unscalable fence.
Look at that.
Tonight, crews
Look at that
begin
fencing.
installing a new
They had this
fence
fencing.
attached to.
They had this fencing before. I just want you to understand. They had this fencing before January 6th, but they decided not to put this fencing up until after January 6th. They had it. They could have put this fencing up. And you heard the guy say unscalable fencing. You could have put this up before January 6th. They waited till after January 6th to put this up.
Concrete barriers at the base surrounding some federal buildings. Armed National Guard troops surround the U.S. Capitol.
Armed National Guard surrounded that. They had the National Guard. They brought the National Guard in after January 6th. Why was the National Guard there before January 6th? That's what you should be asking yourself.
The 7-foot fence. Around 20,000 National Guard members are expected in D.C. to protect the Capitol, federal buildings, and help local law enforcement. The FBI has warned of threats to D.C., including to lawmakers and federal monuments, and the possibility of armed groups.
So that is Joe Biden. That's why Joe Biden had a peaceful transition, because Joe Biden's transition happened behind this. That's where Yeah, it was 100% peaceful. So on January 20th, when Joe Biden was sworn in, he was sworn in, and I mean, he had National Guard there, he had the fencing, it was 100% peaceful. What was Trump's transition like? Hold on. Let's go back here. What was Trump's transition like? This is Trump's transition.
Burning cars and smashed windows. A small group of protesters dressed in black, their faces covered, armed with hammers and bricks. Facing off with thousands of officers on site, many in riot gear, confronting them with...
All right, so that's Trump's transition, Biden's transition. Biden's transition, Trump's transition. Hold on.
Flashbang grenades and pepper spray. The committee is running because they're going to...
So who had the peaceful transfer of power? That's what I want to know. Who had the peaceful transfer of power? But again, I asked the question, Nancy Pelosi.
Chuck Schumer and Mitch McConnell and I were begging the administration to send the National Guard.
Yeah, I asked the question again, Nancy. Why was the National Guard not there before? Why was the fencing not put up before? Why were precautions not taken to prevent what happened at the Capitol on 9/11? This is any rational person who is a thinking person should be asking these questions. The budget for Capitol Police in 2020 was just under $500 million. This is the budget that some of the largest police forces in the United States, municipal police forces, have. Cities like Detroit, New Orleans, have budgets of $500 million. Capitol Police, who their only responsibility is taking care of Capitol Square, had a budget of $500 million, just under $500 million in 2020. So why wasn't the National Guard there before? Why wasn't the fencing put up there before? Now, before we start talking and answering that question, let's listen to what, hold on, AOC says. I love AOC. Listen to this.
1 week before, the week prior to the insurrection, I started to get text messages that I needed to be careful. And that in particular, I needed to be careful about the 6th. For the timeline for you to know, this Congress got sworn in that Sunday, and the insurrection happened, Sunday, then the insurrection happened Wednesday. So there was Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. I probably started getting text messages about having plans for my safety, or me trying to figure something out about Thursday. And those text messages came from other members of Congress. They were not threats, but they were other members saying that they knew, and that they were hearing even from Trump people and Republicans, that they knew in their life that there was violence expected on Wednesday.
So AOC says that she was getting text messages a week before January 6th from other members of Congress, and they all knew that there was going to be violence on Wednesday, 1 week before Nancy Pelosi. I sure would love to see those text messages. I'm wondering why the January 6th committee did not get AOC's text messages. I wonder why the January 6th committee, Star Chamber Committee, didn't answer these questions that I'm asking here on According to Sam about why the fence wasn't put up before January 6th, about why the National Guard wasn't there before January 6th. I'm not talking about when the riot was happening, Nancy Pelosi, and you and Chuck Schumer on the phone with the Trump administration. Yeah, we need to get the National Guard here now. The riot's already happening. Why were they not there before? When AOC is getting text messages from other members of Congress saying that you better have a plan. AOC knew to have a plan. Why didn't the Capitol Police have a plan? Nancy Pelosi? Huh? Why didn't they have a plan? This guy right here is why they didn't have a plan. This guy right here, this guy's name is Paul Irving. And Paul Irving was the House Sergeant at Arms during the January 6 attacks. And the House Sergeant of Arms, he answers directly to the Speaker of the House. The Speaker of the House Sergeant at Arms is the Speakers of the House's lackey. He does whatever the Speaker of the House tells him what to do, the House Sergeant at Arms, Mr. Irving here. And Mr. Irving was part of a 4-member group that included the House Sergeant at Arms, the Senate Sergeant at Arms, the Capitol Architect, and the Capitol Police Chief. 4-member group that's called the Capitol Board. And Mr. Irving here, he's the reason that the National Guard was not there before. And probably the reason that the fencing was not put up.
4.
Okay, so let's get down here and let's listen to the testimony. This is the General Walker is the general of the Washington, D.C. National Guard. This is the person who you need to make a formal request to if you want the National Guard to be deployed. And I want you to listen to what General Walker here says about the Chief of Capitol Police. Chief of Capitol Police is Chief Son, and Chief Son is part of that 4-member group I just told you about. And I want you to hear what General Walker says about Chief Son, the Chief of Capitol Police. Take a listen.
I talked to Chief Son on Sunday. I talked to him Saturday and Sunday. We talk. We're friends. Mm-hmm. I've known him for a long time. So on Sunday, I asked him, are you going to request D.C. National Guard help? And if you do, I need it in writing. It has to be formal because the Secretary of Defense has to approve it. He told me he was not allowed to request the support. And I asked him if he wanted me to.
What? Chief Son told him that he's not allowed to request the support? The hell is that about? Why was Chief Son, the Chief of Capitol Police, it's his job to protect the Capitol, protect the members there. They have a almost $500 million budget. He's not allowed to request the assistance of the National Guard. This is what the general of the National Guard testified to. Now, it's funny because some of these clips, I don't have a lot more time, but some of these clips I'm playing are from the investigations that they did in the House of Representatives and the Senate. This is a Senate Intelligence Committee investigation. These committees did these investigations immediately after January 6th, and they got a lot more information than the January 6th Star Chamber Committee did, because the Star Chamber Committee with Adam Kinzinger and Dick Cheney's daughter and all other Democrats, they weren't trying to get to the truth. That investigation, that Star Chamber Committee, they only had one objective, and that was to pin it on Trump. They didn't care about the truth. But when you get into some of these committees, when they brought in members of the Trump administration, generals from the military, when they brought in Chief Son, when they brought in Paul Irving, I'm getting ready to show you clips from them. You had these committees and you had real Republicans on the committees who asked real questions, and you got a lot more information from these committee hearings. So that's what this is. This is a committee hearing.
I talked to Chief Son on Sunday. I talked to him Saturday and Sunday. We talk. We're friends. Mm-hmm. I've known him for a long time. So on Sunday, I asked him, are you going to request D.C. National Guard help? And if you do, I need it in writing. It has to be
This
formal.
is Sunday.
Because
This is Sunday. Remember, AOC says she's getting text messages from other members of Congress on Thursday, the Thursday before the Sunday. I'm getting text messages from other members of Congress. They know that there's going to be violence. I need to have a safety plan, is what AOC says. Sunday. This is the Sunday. There's still the insurrection doesn't happen for 3 days later.
I talked to Chief Son on Sunday. I talked to him Saturday and Sunday. We talk. We're friends. I've known him for a long time. So on Sunday, I asked him, are you going to request D.C. National Guard help? And if you do, I need it in writing. It has to be formal because the Secretary of Defense has to approve it. He told me he was not allowed to request a support. And I asked him if he wanted me to share that. And he said, no, I can't even ask you for the support, is what he told me. But he did say, but if I do call you, will you be able to support me?
So listen to what he's saying. He's saying that, no, I can't, I'm not allowed to request the guard before the event where we know there's going to be violence, because that would make all the sense in the world. I can't request it. I'm not allowed. Something is preventing me from requesting, from doing my job as the chief of Capitol Police. Something is preventing me from requesting. And then why does there have to be a request? Why? Because we have 3 branches of government, people. We have 3 separate but equal branches of government. If the president of the United States sends the National Guard to the Capitol without a request, that's the definition of a real insurrection. The commander-in-chief cannot send the military, the armed military, to the Capitol or to the Supreme Court without a request. You understand? So that's why there has to be a formal request for the commander-in-chief, a separate branch of government that commands the military, to send the military to a separate branch of government. So there has to be a formal request. So Chief Son, who's friends with General Walker, he's talking to him and saying, are you going to request the guard on Wednesday? He's like, I'm not allowed to request the guard on Wednesday. But after the riot happens, on day of, if I need you, are you going to be able to come and help me? What are you talking about day of? I'm talking about beforehand. I'm talking about creating a security force, a deterrent force beforehand. But he says, no, I'm not allowed. But if I need you day of, are you going to be able to come help me?
He said, no. I can't even ask you for the support, is what he told me. But he did say, but if I do call you, will you be able to support me? I said, yes, but I have to get approval from the Secretary of the Army and ultimately the Secretary of Defense because it's a federal request.
All right, so why was Chief Son not allowed to to request the support from the National Guard? It's because of this guy right here, Paul Irving, who answers directly to Nancy Pelosi, to the Speaker of the House. Paul Irving would not allow him to request the National Guard because the request has to come from that 4-member board that I told you about. And I want you to listen to this testimony.
So why did you believe that you needed the approval of Mr. Irving and Mr. Stinger to request assistance to the National Guard?
That's always been the case. We only requested the National Guard for very specific events, usually the inauguration, and that requires a declaration of emergency from the Capitol Police Board to utilize those resources.
Do you know if there's a statutory requirement for that?
I could look into that and get that to you as a follow-up if you'd like.
I don't know that there is, but I do know that if you get the approval to expand the perimeter and you don't have the assistance to do that, that's obviously a problem. So Mr. Irving and Mr. Stinger both, let's start with Mr. Irving. Why was the request for National Guard assistance not approved at the same time you approved the expansion of the perimeter?
Senator, I did not take the call from Chief Son on the 4th as a request. Chief Son called me to tell me that he had received an offer from the National Guard to provide us 125 unarmed troops to work traffic control in the perimeter of the Capitol.
That's a lie.
Shortly after that discussion, I said, let's include Sergeant at Arms Stanger as chair of the board and another senior official with quite a bit of experience. The three of us talked it through. And during that call, the number one question on the table was, did the intelligence support it? Did the intelligence support that additional offer for those 125 troops?
Did you discuss this with anybody except Sergeant Armstanger and Chief Sund?
No, it was just this one phone call. And during that call, we all agreed that the intelligence did not support the troops and collectively decided to let it go.
The intelligence did not support. That's why they didn't call the National Guard, because this guy said that the intelligence did not support the need for the National Guard. That's weird. That's so weird that the intelligence didn't support that. That's so weird. Because
1 week before, the week prior to the insurrection,
intelligence.
I started to get text messages that I needed to be careful. And that in particular, I needed to be careful about the 6th.
So AOC had better intelligence than the House Sergeant at Arms, Nancy Pelosi. That's what you're telling me? And the chief of Capitol Police, AOC, had better intelligence in her text messages. That's what y'all are telling me. That's what y'all are telling me. I'm almost done here. So there was guard requested from the Trump administration, a formal written request from the city of Washington, D.C. It was made by Muriel Bowser, the mayor of D.C., and Mayor Bowser ordered unarmed guards. She's underestimating the threat. D.C. Muriel Bowser ordered unarmed guards. So she ordered unarmed guards. And when the riot happened day of, they were trying to get the Trump administration to redeploy those unarmed guards that Mayor Bowser had requested, formally written request beforehand, like she was supposed to, but she wasn't supposed to stipulate that they be unarmed, but that's what she did. And General Walker, gave her request, gave her 300 or so, I think it was 300 or so guardsmen, but unarmed. So with Nancy Pelosi's talking here and she says that we were on the phone with the Trump administration trying to get them to send a guard. What she's not telling you is what they were trying to get the Trump administration to do was to redeploy these unarmed guards that Mayor Bowser had requested to the Capitol, and the Trump administration said, no, we want to get them their weapons because we don't know what's going on at the Capitol, and you should have requested them before, but we're not armed guard to the Capitol when we don't know what's going on and we're unprepared. They wanted to get them their weapons is what happened here. And listen to what she says again.
From the undisclosed location, Chuck Schumer and Mitch McConnell and I were begging the administration to send the National Guard. We spoke to the Army, the Secretary of the Army. Well, I don't know. It takes time. And
they weren't saying, well, I don't know. And they weren't saying, I don't know. It takes time. They were saying that we need to get these guys equipped and before we send them to the Capitol. Let me explain this to you. Almost done. Explain this to you. The reason that Muriel Bowser ordered unarmed guard is because she was still upset about the fact that in June, when the Black Lives Matter riots started earlier that year in 2020, they attacked the White House. And remember, Trump was forced into his underground bunker. They tried to burn down St. John's Church, which is across the street from the White House. It was a violent attack. And then Trump used the National Guard to clear the square. You guys remember that? He used the National Guard with tear gas to clear the square, and then he walked out with the Bible across the street to St. John's Church, and he holds up the Bible, basically saying that I'm going to protect your religious institutions. I'm not going to let these fascists burn down your religious institutions. And Mayor Bowser was upset that Trump had used the National Guard, armed National Guard, to clear the Black Lives Matter protesters, rioters, from the square in front of the Capitol. So that is why she ordered unarmed guard during January 6th. And they were unprepared. So when you're talking about redeploying these people to the Capitol, they had to get prepared. Again, why wasn't the guard there before? Why wasn't the fence put up before? You're telling me you did not have the intelligence that AOC had in her text messages? It's nonsense. I want you to listen to this last bit of testimony, and then we're going to get out of here.
The Intelligence Division of the Capitol Police issued an internal report which reportedly stated, and this is some of this has been out in the public domain, that instead of targeting counter-protesters, as you've seen in the prior events that occurred that you've referenced earlier, that, quote, this is quote that's been out in the public domain, that Congress itself is the target on the 6th by Trump supporters.
Listen to this. Listen to this. This is an internal report to the Capitol Police that refutes what Sanger says, that we didn't have the intelligence that there was going to be violence. This is an internal report that to the Capitol Police, and it states specifically that there's not only going to be violence, that Congress is the target of the violence. The report they got said Congress is the target of the violence, and Chief Son was not allowed to request the National Guard. They didn't put up any fencing. Look at this article from the New York Times. Hold on. Capitol Police told to hold back riot response on January 6th, report finds. Despite being tipped that Congress itself is the target. That's in quotes. That comes from the report. Congress itself is the target. Despite being tipped that Congress itself is the target on January 6th, Capitol Police were ordered not to use their most powerful crowd control weapons, and according to a scathing new watchdog report. This is the Inspector General's report, where he found out that they were ordered to stand down despite getting a report that Congress itself was the target. Nancy?
That Congress itself is the target on the 6th by Trump supporters. Congress was the target. The report also mentioned that members of the Proud Boys, white supremacist groups, other extremist groups would be in attendance and, quote, again out in public sources, may be inclined to become violent. So you have your own report. Did you see that report that was put out on the 3rd?
Yes, I did.
So how is not that a warning of some extraordinary measures? Now, I understand you increased and you had folks there and you increased your presence. But how is that not a real big warning flag? And if it was, what exactly did you do when you read that report?
So that was one of the reports that contributed to the fact that we expanded our perimeter. I reached out.
You didn't expand your perimeter. You didn't expand your perimeter. This is how you expand a perimeter, Chief Son. You put up a fence. You put up a fence. Where's the fence at? You put up a fence, a security fence. This is a perimeter right here. This is a perimeter, Chief Son. That's a perimeter right there. You guys didn't have a perimeter. What are you talking about? You expanded the perimeter.
Looking at it, I'd reach
it's a lie.
That report.
So that was one of the reports that contributed to the fact that we expanded our perimeter. I reached out, looking at it, I'd reach out to the Metropolitan Police Department, just knowing, even before that report, knowing, what that extremists were likely to be there. In the previous reports for it, that has been called for on social media for people to be armed. In talking with our partners over at the Metropolitan Police Department, I had reached out to say, hey, you're going to be able to provide us some support, and we coordinated that additional support.
No. I reached out to the city and say you're going to be able to surprise. Why did you not request the National Guard? And the reason you didn't request the National Guard is General Walker already told us why he didn't request the National Guard is because he wasn't allowed to request the National Guard. People, this stinks to high heaven. Stinks to high heaven. I could go on. I could do hours of this type of exposing these people on January 6th in this podcast. I just don't have the time. And in the next podcast, we're going to get back into these witches. So I may pick it up later. There's a lot. But I'll see you guys on Friday. Thank you so much for listening.